We've talked about this in the past, and so many of you were interested and texted in and had shared your experiences that I thought I would bring her back again to talk about parental alienation. Natalie Forchuk is the founder and advocate for Parental Alienation Support Canada. She joins me on the line. Good evening, Natalie. How are you?
Good evening, Maureen. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for asking. Now, through Parental Alienation Support Canada, you support people mentally, physically, and emotionally through parental alienation. This is something that you are familiar with as it happened to you. Can you share your story with the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. In the fall of 2016, my children transitioned to living in Ontario. So the little bit of backstory is we planned to move in September of 2016 to Burlington, Ontario. Both my ex and I, even though we weren't together anymore. And my very best friend was living there. And she's part of the reason that I wanted to move. I wanted to move away from Vancouver. There's a lot of baggage here. I wanted a fresh start. Kids get a fresh start. And so the three of us agreed that the kids would start the school year on time, and therefore she would become their guardian, and my ex would move out there, and then I would move out there in December because I had a business to close down. Now, this person had been in our lives since my daughter was 6 weeks old, so no fear there. Legal documents are drawn. Fantastic. We fly out there, kids start school, they're settled in, they've got scouts, they've got guides. I'm back in Vancouver, and I'm going back and forth now to Toronto every 3 weeks to see my kids, and I'm talking to them every day. In the course of 6 weeks, suddenly my children refused to speak with me. And both my ex and my best friend were telling me, well, there's some things coming up, Natalie, that they don't like about you. There are things that you've done that scared them. And I started talking to a counselor there who told me that she wouldn't allow me to talk to my kids. Over the course of 4 months, I lost complete contact with my kids, and my ex and this person blocked me from even seeing them when I flew to Ontario. So I'd be flying there, and I would not be able to see them. Now, many people ask me all the time, why didn't you call the police while you were there? Why didn't you move earlier? And it's complicated. When you're in early PA, especially if you don't know what it is, you can't put a name to it, you're in denial. I had no idea what this was. These were people that I trusted, people that I gave my children to. And suddenly, my children hate me. I moved out on December 19th, 2023, on a very cold, dark, snowy night in Ontario. My children were residing 2 blocks away from me at my best friend's house. And I couldn't see them. Tried to talk to my ex? Absolutely not. The only contact I got were some photos on Christmas Eve of all of them together, 2 blocks away from me, while I was alone. I continually tried to see them over the course of December into the new year of 2017. My children's birthdays are both in January 2017, and I wasn't able to see them. At this point, I'm sending emails every day and texts every day to my ex and to this other person saying, we need to solve this. What can I do? At this point, I'm not working yet in Ontario, so this is a full-time job. And I am devastated. I have videos that I made daily at that time, and it's horrible to go back and watch because I just didn't know what to do. On January 16th, I was served for sole custody by my ex, and that began the court process. He engaged the top divorce lawyers in Toronto, so I had to engage a top lawyer in Burlington. She's actually a criminal defense lawyer, and we began the process of going to court. We went through 5 court dates over the course of January to May of 2017. All during this time, I am not seeing my kids. They are kept from me. I can't show up at the school. I can't pick them up. I haven't seen them. I haven't talked to them. Like, by the day, the chasm is growing in my heart of not seeing my children. It was horrible. I was a shell of a person. Finally, we had a long motion, which is a trial. It was ruled parental alienation, which was very rare back in 2016. We had a great judge, but I still didn't get my kids back. Funny enough, it took a medical event on my ex's side for me to get emergency custody. And I'm actually just looking at the document here on April 28th of 2017. And here's the interesting thing. when I picked up my children, it was like no time had passed. They were excited to see me. And that's the thing about parental alienation. The kids don't know what's going on. They're being kept from the other parent. They're being manipulated. They're being told what to do and what not to do, and that, falsehoods about the other parent. And when they saw me, they hugged me. They were happy. They came home with me. We had dinner. Yes, there were some little bumps that we had to go through, but overall, we settled right back into a really great schedule. At that point, though, we're also ruled to go through what's called reunification therapy, and it's about as fun as it sounds. It's done by a private therapist, and you do family therapy, individual therapy, and couples therapy, and we were ordered to do it for a year. So from May 2017 until June 2018, I spent 3 to 4 hours a week in this therapist's office, often being told that I wasn't allowed to have the feelings that I had, which were anger and guilt and shame and heartbreak, because I wasn't productive in the therapeutic process. It was an absolute ridiculous ride. And at the same time, I had to facilitate a regular 50-50 custody schedule, like nothing had ever happened. I was shell-shocked.
Wow.
I mean, there's parts of... I had to do a lot of research and writing in order to remember all of these points. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is, until I started really digging into like every email, every court document, and I put together my timeline, I couldn't remember half of this. It was such a traumatic time.
I'm sure it was. Stepping back to that, I mean, there's such betrayal on the part of your husband, and not only your husband, but by your best friend as well. Were there marital issues before moving out to Ontario, if I may ask?
Oh, we had already been separated since 2013.
Okay, so you had been separated, but you were still in contact with your best friend.
Yeah, she was still living when my ex left. She was still living in Vancouver, and we talked every day. Like, there was never a separation between the two of us, other than when she moved to Ontario. There's physical separation, but even then, the kids and I would fly out and stay with her every 6 months. We'd fly out for Christmas, or she'd fly out to us. We were very, very close, closer to her than to my ex-husband at the time. Right,
and then did they get into a relationship?
It's always the question, and I don't believe so. That's what the first question everyone asks is that, were they in it together? And I just don't see it. I've looked at it 6 ways from Sunday, and I just don't see it. I see in her, I see, honestly, a sociopath who really felt that I didn't deserve my kids, and she wanted to get them away from me.
My guest is Natalie Forchuk, founder and advocate at Parental Alienation Support Canada.com. And if you need support, you can email hello@ParentalAlienationSupportCanada.com. Natalie, thanks so much for staying on the line. If you don't mind, can you just define for the listeners what parental alienation is?
Sure. So simply put, parental alienation is when one parent turns the child against the other parent. So a parent badmouths a child, like there's been a separation or divorce, and a parent will say, your father won't send you money for hockey, so you can't go to hockey. Or your dad left because, he's a bad person. It just plants the seeds, or outrightly tells the child that the other party is a horrible person.
Mm-hmm. And if you're just joining the program, Natalie shared her heart-wrenching story about her own parental alienation, where her ex-husband and best friend turned her children against her, and then they wound up in court and in rehab therapy to get the family back together in a certain way, a way that was more amicable. And Natalie, where are you and your children today in this process?
Today it's actually interesting because I've been re-alienated from one of my children. So my daughter lives with me on the West Coast, and my son has remained in Toronto with his father, and I haven't seen my son in 2.5 years. And
so you were reunited with your son and daughter, and how long did that last?
From 2017, mid-2017. Things got really good in about 2018 until May of 2021.
And was it the same couple that they're not a couple apparently? The ex-husband and the best friend? It's hard to believe, but
and listen, viewers will probably say, yeah, right. No, they probably were. And I actually don't know. So
yeah.
speculate
We
away.
never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Correct.
But so did the two of them then re-alienate your son?
No, it really was this time just my ex-husband, although I do know that they remained in communication. So it's possible, but she wasn't present. She actually returned to Vancouver in 2018 to live out on the West Coast again, which is where she's from.
Mm-hmm. Women supporting women, huh?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean, you hear these stories, best friends, having affairs with, their best friends' husbands, that kind of thing. So now you're with one child and the other one has been alienated against you, which brings up another problem which I don't know that your ex is realizing, but then it separates the siblings from one another. I mean, this really, and I hope it hasn't, but this has the potential to inflict tremendous mental health issues on children.
Absolutely. I know for a fact my daughter is suffering with mental health issues, and it is regards to all of this trauma and turmoil and chaos. I can only imagine for my son, but to split a family in the way that it's been split, which was aggressively and one-sided, not in agreement or in tandem, can only do harm to all parties.
Absolutely. And, parental alienation, or PA, as you said, profoundly affects both children and the alienated parents. And children of parental alienation are at increased risk for future trust, relationship issues, depression, and substance abuse. And I've seen that in my clinical practice. I'm thinking, coming to mind a woman who turned her children, or tried to turn her children, against her ex-husband. And one child has depression, another one has anger issues, and another one has substance abuse issues. And the pain for you, it just must be excruciating.
It is. It's a pain I live with, obviously, on a daily basis, and it's taken a lot of self-work. I do attend therapy regularly. That's an absolute must. And try to work through it every day. As of today, my son is in grade 12, and I'm missing his grade 12 year. And, there are constant reminders around everywhere in life. There's other teenagers that I see every day, and I constantly live in that place of grief, a cycle of grief that never ends.
Absolutely. And there are, to my understanding, some symptoms of parental alienation, like you mentioned, a campaign of denigration. For people out there who are listening who might be experiencing this, who may have experienced this, you may have gone through weak, frivolous, absurd rationalizations, a lack of ambivalence, that independent thinker phenomenon, absence of guilt. The alienating parent has no guilt around it, which, says to me maybe they don't have emotions, they lack empathy, maybe they're a sociopath. And, it's just, it not only affects you as the parent, the alienated parent, but it also affects the cousins and the aunts and uncles and grandparents. I mean, this is just, has this domino effect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. I mean, in my specific case, but I know many other people that I mentor and coach, the same thing is the splitting of the family. Suddenly kids are losing that, group family dynamic that they may have had, and they can go for years without seeing a grandparent. Grandparents can pass. People can pass away without ever having reconnected, and also under a false narrative. Usually on the alienator side, the family has a very different understanding as to what has happened versus what has actually happened. They think, in my case, I'm a bad wife, I'm a bad mother. I made it all up. Very much gaslighting all day long. But the family chooses to believe that rather than to explore and say, hey, maybe there's a problem on our side.
Right. So his family is supporting him, your ex's? Yeah. And, all of this, I imagine, this is a word that I use commonly, is the depleted mother syndrome, or the depleted woman syndrome. That feeling of mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion, depersonalization, no fulfillment. And it's caused by, these demands, these emotional demands that you have to try to figure this out and try to do the best for your children.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you, I have been depleted. It is a constant toll to try and figure out what is the right move for my daughter. What is the right way to try and stay connected to my son? Will I ever see him again? Will he ever believe me? What are the long-term effects on my daughter? You know, being a woman in this day and age and being a mother is hard enough on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Throw in something like this, and it is mentally, physically, and emotionally taxing every single day.
Oh, I can't even imagine. To people out there who are suffering with this, and it certainly can be mothers who turn their children against the father, or mothers against another mother as well. If they're in a same-sex relationship, it can happen to anybody, basically. What would you say to somebody out there who thinks they might be experiencing this or are, in fact, in the throes of parental alienation?
I would say to them, first of all, if you think that you are, you likely are. There are some very clear signs. And when our children stop communicating with us on a regular basis, they stop sharing, they become reticent, they become angry. Children don't come up with those concepts on their own. When they start writing to you or texting in a way that is an adult tone, you know your child. And if you're starting to see these signs of the withdrawal and the lack of connection, you likely are experiencing it. And if you are experiencing it, there's a few things to do. First of all, get support for yourself, whether that's therapy or, coming to a support group or a support page like ours. Educate yourself. Find a therapist and a lawyer who understand and acknowledge PA. There are PA deniers out there in the legal community and even in the therapeutic community. So, choose wisely. But also, first and foremost, know that has nothing to do with you. This is not your fault. Even though it's against you and it's against your children, you did not do this. And the alienator is going to be telling you it is all your fault. It is total gaslighting, and it's easy to buy into and question yourself. But please know that you're not alone. You can overcome this, and there are people and resources out there to help.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Natalie Forchuk, my guest, is the founder and advocate for Parental Alienation Support Canada. You can email the organization hello@parentalalienationsupportcanada.com. Natalie, I want to say thank you once again, and I wish you and your children all the best in your future endeavors and getting your family back together.
I appreciate that, Maureen. Thank you so much for the opportunity.